Wake up, everyone. No sleeping. We're coming around to the end of the conference. Thank you for sticking with us this far. How you feeling? Radiodays, how you feeling? Thank you for coming to the round room. We're hopefully gonna, get some interactivity in this session. I'm very happy to introduce this session that I can say I produced, but really it was our speakers that produced it. I found these two wonderful people through the Solutions Journalism Network, which is a super great international organization of folks that are really interested in solutions journalism, so you should all check that out. We've been hearing a lot about how to attract younger audiences, and solutions journalism, constructive journalism, is kind of resoundingly the answer. So for a little bit of a how to get started, how to keep going, how to level up, I'm really pleased to welcome Meenal Thakur, who is the project coordinator for the Solutions Journalism program at Transitions, and Jeremy Druker, who is the director of Transitions. So please take it away.
I'm not sure if it's on. Yeah, okay, now it is. So thank you, Sarah. Very happy to be here. We are, as Sarah said, going to give you an introduction to solutions journalism, talk about all the possibilities that it offers. Before we begin, just a little bit of background, probably, especially people outside of Prague have not heard of us. So we are a Czech NGO that produces an online magazine in English about Central and Eastern Europe for global audiences. And then we also do a lot of journalism training, especially solutions journalism training across Central and Eastern Europe and parts of Western Europe as well. So that's us. A little bit of background about what we're trying to aim to do today. Our objectives, so we want to give you a better idea of what solutions journalism means. Probably many of you have heard the term, maybe heard constructive journalism, maybe you're confused, you think it's all about happy news and firemen saving kittens up in trees and things like that. So we want to really give you a better idea of what solutions journalism is and why to employ this lens in storytelling and reporting. And then number two, look at some examples of solutions journalism, give you an idea of these four basic criteria of solutions journalism as defined by the Solutions Journalism Network. And then number three, talk a little bit at the end about why and how this can increase audience engagement. And then we're gonna have some time at the end, so if you have any questions, please save them. We're hoping we're gonna stay on track and give you around 15 minutes to ask questions at the end. So those are the objectives for the next half an hour or so. And the first question we wanted to ask you, this is something we do wherever we start a training session, is to start to talk about what kind of mood is evoked by the news today. And I'm not sure how many of you work in news or in other aspects of radio or audio, but it's very important for us just to kind of be on the same page about what kind of reactions news today are evoking among our audiences. So if you could just take a look, there's a code up here. I hope you can see it in the back. If you go to menti.com and use the code 53136794 and just enter like what kind of moods, what kind of feelings you feel when you flip on the TV and watch the news program or open a news site or in any way consume news. So we'll give you just a minute or two and then we'll go from there. Yeah, there you go. 53136794. Okay, it seems most of you probably entered your feelings here, and you can see it is overwhelmingly, people enter depressed, hopeless, stressed, anxiety. What else is there? Sad. Not too many positive words, I think anywhere there. Despair. A lot of times people say they feel powerless. So I think we all know where this is leading, and you've probably seen a lot of the figures about news fatigue, also known as news aversion, and what numbers, what amount of people today are just simply turning off the news. Because a lot of us are journalists probably in this room, but the general public will give you pretty much the same answers here. So some of the figures that we've been looking at, you can see.
Sorry, just
this. Yeah, actually, before we get to some of the figures, we want to call out a little bit of what is prompting these kind of feelings. So we have another kind of interactive exercise here.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for your insights and sharing your feelings with us. Just to put your feelings in context, and we see that there's this collective sense of despair and helplessness and hopelessness in the room, we have this little game, quiz, whatever you can call it for you, which will hopefully help you in placing these feelings that you have in a better context. And without wasting much time, this is very self-explanatory. There are a few questions. You can see the first question on the screen, and we can just do a show of hands, and let's see if we have one answer. We'll have 5 questions, and after that, we'll bring in the word cloud and this quiz together, and we will drive home the point of why solutions journalism matters. So the first question, what share of the population in high-income countries like Germany and the USA live in extreme poverty? Less than 1%, 11%, around 21%. Can we quickly have a consensus on what should we go for here? What do you think? Just quick, someone throw a number at me. Thank you very much. Should we go on to the next question? What share of the world's population don't have enough food to meet their daily needs? Do you want to give me an answer? 23? I hear more of 23. How much of the excess heat from global warming is captured in the oceans? Someone said 10. It was 90, the complete extreme of 10. We'll just go through maybe 2 more questions. What happened to the global suicide rate in the last 20 years? A bit louder, just feel free. Increased? Do I have it increased? Stayed the same? That part of the room says decreased. I have someone saying decreased. Decreased by 25%. Fewer people are thankfully taking their lives. Not taking their lives. I'm sorry, it's a horrible thing to say. In low-income countries across the world, what share of girls went to the school until at least age 11 before the pandemic? Should we do one next, Jeremy, one more and we're done? Or
sure.
Do you guys want to do one more or should we move on? We're also mindful of the time. We have 30 minutes for this. Okay, just one last question and we move on. How many companies in the world have a woman as top manager or CEO? 2. That part is very hopeful. This part is full of despair and the middle is still deciding. So 2 is what I hear. It's 18. This takes us back to the presentation where we are going to tell you why this quiz and this word game feeds into solutions journalism, Jeremy?
So I think you're probably getting where we're heading here, but people tend to get almost all of these questions wrong. Some of you did well, it sounds like, but if you go through this whole Gapminder test, people generally get 75, 80% of those questions wrong. Obviously, very related to all the negativity that we're being bombarded with from the media nonstop. As I said, these are some of the figures that we've been seeing more and more. This is from the Reuters digital report from last year. So you can see here, 42% trust the media in Central and Eastern Europe. The figures are even lower. And what has been shown over and over again is that this is the main reason. My organization, we also run a lot of programs trying to counter disinformation. So my assumption had been that people are not reading the news and tuning out because they simply don't trust it. That is an important reason, but if you look at the figures, you can see here, it is much more because people are getting burnt out. 36% say the news brings down their mood. 29% feel worn out by the news. 29% think it can't be trusted. So all of that together is creating a population that is more and more likely to simply tune out. That figure also of 36%, I think 5 years ago it was around 29%. So we can see in 5 years, the figure has gone up dramatically. So this is why we're suggesting the way to go is solutions journalism, constructive journalism, and really trying to inspire people rather than offer them depressing news over and over again. So one of the reasons, not the only reason, and those are among you in the audience who are journalists will know this, is because we as journalists are taught that what we're supposed to be doing is uncovering everything bad in the world. All the crime, the corruption, the war, the conflict, that's our main job. That we will uncover all this stuff and somehow it will magically get better. There is obviously an issue here, we'll probably go into it later, about if it's a supply issue or a demand issue, because still studies do show that unfortunately people are more apt to click on negative headlines and things like that. And we know a lot of media are in the business of clickbait and trying to get people in with stories of accidents, plane crashes, and things like that. But one of the main reasons is we as journalists have not really been taught how to tell the other part of the story. We're overly focusing on this idea of the journalist as the watchdog.
Yeah.
So what we're explaining through solutions journalism is that the role of the journalist should be more as a guide dog. So we're not arguing you should give up, or any of us should give up investigative reporting and uncovering the bad stuff. That is part of our jobs. But we need to take it a step further and guide people towards effective responses to all these problems that we are uncovering. It's not enough to simply stay as the watchdog, but we also need this kind of guide dog that is guiding people towards effective solutions that can make the world a better place. So the main differences, these kind of solution stories, and we're going to show you some examples in a moment and describe more of what each of them contains. But the net feeling should be that people feel more inspired than depressed. They see examples, success stories, and the more they see of those types of stories, hopefully the more optimistic they will be, less depressed. This will balance that image and give a full picture of what's going on in the world. Really like this, the whole story and not just part of the story. Again, people have been doing variations of solutions journalism for decades, hundreds of years, but there's simply not enough of it today.
So this brings us to the question, what exactly then is the craft of solutions journalism? We know that in this conference so far, a lot of speakers have come and have spoken about their projects, which use the solutions journalism approach, which use constructive journalism approach, but we are here to break it down for you so that you know how you can use it in your stories. What is it exactly that constitutes a solutions journalism piece? Solutions journalism is rigorous evidence-based reporting on existing responses to social problems, and we are also very mindful of sometimes not calling it a solution per se, but it's a response to a problem, but we call it solutions journalism. This also feeds back to the test that we did in the beginning of the presentation. You told us that you were feeling depressed and anxious when you read the news around you, and this leads to kind of a bias that you have towards problem-focused news. When we asked you questions about girls going to school, about suicide rates, how's the climate doing, automatically you assume that things are not going very well. Because this is the kind of media that you're consuming, these are the kind of stories which come onto your feed. But then solution journalism tells you that things are not that bad, and there are people, there are communities, there are actors in place who are creating responses to problems that they face in their local context. So the first pillar, what we say of solutions journalism, is a response. It's a response to a problem, and it's talking about how did the solution come about, what was the problem in place, and what is the community doing about it. Secondly, solutions journalism provides evidence of impact. Now, this is what separates solutions journalism from a PR piece, because in solutions journalism, when we are talking about a response to a social problem, we give impact. How is it? Is it something you can use data, you can use quantitative, you can use qualitative data, you can use anecdotes, just to make sure that you're telling the audience that this response is working. There is evidence of impact. The third pillar of solutions journalism is insights. Insights matter because solutions journalism aims to talk about solutions or responses which are scalable, which can be adapted and adopted to different contexts where people are facing similar problems. So insights make it very important so that others who want to replicate the solution in their local context know how the response came into being in the first place. And the fourth pillar of solutions journalism is limitation. Again, something which is very important and separates it from a PR piece, from hero worship, or from a fluff piece, because no response is perfect. We are not selling a response to you. We are just telling you that this is a response which a community has come up with to a problem they were facing, and these are the potential limitations. So this is also keeping the conversation going about, here are people making efforts to change something around, but yes, there are problems. And now, to put these four pillars of solutions journalism into context, we have a very short video clip, which is a very, very nice example of how a solutions piece can be done. And maybe this is something that can inspire you to use this approach in your reporting in different formats, audio, video, in this case, audio. In this next slide, we will see, if you can play this. It's a 4-minute video, and stay with us, but you'll see what we're getting at.
If cows ate bushes and grazed in woodland, could it help reduce climate change? These fields in Colombia were once grass pasture. Now the cows have plants and flowers to eat.
That's what they eat. Botón de oro. This has 25% of protein, and it's very good for them.
On this diet, cows grow faster, so they're ready for slaughter much sooner. And the plants help the environment.
When the rain comes, the plants keep the water a little bit in the land, so they don't run this way, because they have all these trees, all these bushes to retain the water.
The cows eat their way through a small patch, and then they're moved a few meters to a fresh patch of bushes. This method of farming has other environmental benefits. The bushes and trees soak up greenhouse gases. You don't have to look far to see the impact of deforestation. This traditional cattle farm is close to Sandra's. Removing trees and planting grass for cattle has depleted the soil. Less grows, so the cattle have to roam further to find enough to eat. Every step damages the soil and makes things worse. And the farmer says his cows are producing less milk.
The pasture's drying up. I've seen production fall.
The man who helped Sandra transform her land is worried about farms like this.
The cattle come here and stay long time, maybe 15, 20 days, walking around looking for food. And that walking of the cattle removes a lot of soil, and it makes soil erosion. When it rains, the soil is going down to the river. The way to solve that problem is dividing the paddocks by using electrical fences and alive fences with trees.
Another ranch, 150 kilometers away, looks more like a safari park for cows. Trees improve soil quality and provide shade. Cows farmed in this way produce more milk. The change in diet helps digestion, so the cows produce less methane, a major contributor to global warming. Carlos says, in time, Gustavo's farm could look like this too. 4,000 farmers have been given foreign aid money to change their farms. But that's just 1% of Colombia's cattle ranchers.
People don't know the systems. So if they are using the system that they know from their grandparents, and they continue doing the same for many, many, many years.
Funding for the pilot is due to end soon. After that, it's unclear how farmers like Gustavo would get financial support to adapt. If cows ate bushes,
Very quickly, if you could identify the four main pillars of solutions journalism, here we see a problem. We're talking about climate change. We're talking about how are we raising animals in farms. We are talking about the response that is in place. How is afforestation helping? Alternative methods of farming are helping. Electrical fences, we see the insights. There's farmers who are talking about how they went towards the, we are also talking about the insights in the ways that there were interviews of the people who are working on the farm. And towards the end, what's most important is the limitation, because we here say that this is not something which is sustainable. What is the problem? The problem is funding, because this is also just 1% of the land. The money will dry out very soon. So how is it that this can then become more sustainable? So we are not selling you a response which will be, say, there forever. But again, this is something which can be implemented. And this is something that you can also replicate in your newsrooms.
Yeah, so we just wanted to quickly run through some of the data just to show you what research has been showing, so you're not just believing us that this leads to greater engagement. So this is some of the research that was done by the Solutions Journalism Network in cooperation with a couple other organizations. And increased engagement, you can see here evidence, at least when these are news stories. People tend to spend more time on the page. They have a more positive view of that issue, of that story, of the news source. They feel more connected. Also, increased self-efficacy, a stronger belief they can contribute to solutions themselves, and I'll give an example of that in a moment. Yeah, and very important, increased interest to learn more. So really opposite of what we were talking about before in terms of people feeling powerless, withdrawing, and not wanting to participate in civic life. People that are exposed to this type of reporting do tend to say they want to get involved more with that issue, learn more, and potentially get involved in a response. And then sharing. I know this is important for all of us, especially if we depend on our websites, much more increased intent to share. So you can see here just an example of tweeting, but generally these are stories with more staying power than some of the sensational stories that might immediately get a lot of clicks and then fade away. The solution stories tend to have more lasting power. So just before I hand it over to Meenal, another example, just to give you an idea, because a lot of times solutions reporting works really well on the local level. So just to give you another indication of kind of potential for civic involvement, which is also important for many of us, take, for example, a situation, a town, which has a really bad school. Students don't like studying there, the teachers don't like working there, graduation rates are really, really low. So typically, an investigative journalist or many journalists would just simply do yet another expose of that school, talking about what they're doing badly, there's no hope, nothing is changing, and so on. That might be an important story to do, but chances are people already know this is a lousy school, not doing anything innovative. A solutions journalist, however, would look around and find a school that's actually doing something well in the same community, ideally, where graduation rates are higher, teachers like going to school there to teach, the kids are excited each morning to actually go to school, and that's what they would do a story about. So the idea in terms of civic involvement is that once that story comes out, hopefully gets some promotion, people start talking about it, that the parents of the kids at the first school will start to get more involved. We'll start to say, okay, the next town over, there's a school actually doing something right. Why can't we be more like them? When hopefully that motivates people to get more involved and try to change things. So just an example on the local level where this stuff tends to work really well. So some audio examples.
Yeah, since we're at Radio Days, and we want you to be inspired by how you can use solutions journalism in audio formats. We have some examples from you how solutions journalism has been successfully practiced on this platform, and you can check them out later, but just to briefly take you through some of them. One podcast is How to Save a Planet, and this was started back in 2020, and this is more of a narrative podcast. This is by Gimlet Media, this digital media company based in the US. And it has a variety of ways of approaching the podcast. Either they dig into archives and they talk about solutions that have worked, or they bring experts on board and they interview them about how solutions have worked. And this is one example of an episode, Why Is It So Hard to Fix Our Electronics? And on this episode, they bring in the CEO of iFixit, and they're talking about repair culture. So this is something that you can check out. Another example is The Whole Story. The Whole Story was actually, it's a very short podcast series of 6 episodes run by this Colombian journalist, Laura Romero, and here she breaks down the concept of solutions journalism in these 6 episodes. She brings in journalists who have started using this approach in their work. She brings experts who are solutions journalism trainers, and you will see an example of some of the episodes that she's done, where she talks about what is the evidence that there is to show that solution journalism has impact. But she's also in one of the episodes talking about the limitations of implementing solutions journalism in newsrooms, which is something that you should check out, because this is a question that journalists often ask themselves and ask that about the problems that they face when they want to kind of institutionalize this approach in their newsrooms. Then we have the example of The Compass by the BBC. It's also a podcast series where they're talking about examples of different responses in different countries in Europe. And then again, BBC also has People Fixing the World, which is similar to previous formats, where they take the case study of an area where a solution has worked and they talk you through how it happened. More broadcasters are embracing solutions journalism, and this is where I would also like to talk about our work in propagating this practice. So we have the solutions journalism cohort, which is the first of its kind in Central and Eastern Europe. We have 5 newsrooms that are a part of it, one of which is LRT, the Lithuanian Radio and Television. Now, we did a couple of workshops with our 5 cohort members, including LRT, around how you can use audience engagement to practice solutions journalism. How can you involve the community? What Jeremy was talking about, ask them what the problem is, ask them what response is the response working for them or not? And this is what LRT did in finding what is it that was bothering Lithuanians and what is it that they wanted to make their podcast on. But they are taking it a step further, and they're practicing a cross-border solutions approach in which some of their journalists are going to Estonia, covering the problem of deinstitutionalization of childcare system. They're looking at how the Estonians have managed to tackle this problem and what are the lessons that Lithuania can learn and how can it be adapted to the Lithuanian context. So this is also a different way of approaching solutions journalism when you often ask yourself, I don't see a solution for a problem where I come from, how do I approach it? So this is one way of doing it. You look for replicable examples elsewhere, and I think their program will be out end of the month, and I encourage you to go check it out. Now, a question that all of you have probably asked yourselves, and this is also why we're here: can solutions journalism become a catalyst for revenue generation? Slowly and steadily, but yes. In the next slide, this is a resource from the Solutions Journalism Network. They're partners in CE, so this is also coming from them. When you talk about solutions journalism and funding, at least in our experience and in experience of a lot of newsrooms that we've worked with, this is something that does resonate with a lot of funders if you make your pitch very clear, if you explain to them why is it that solutions journalism matters and what kind of impact can it create at the community level. And I know when the question of money comes, a lot of us get uncomfortable because it's not something that we are kind of naturally equipped to talk about. But this is also what we've learned, that you should not hesitate to talk about money when you're talking to funders and you're pitching a solutions journalism project, because there is evidence, which Jeremy shared with you before, that the approach of solutions journalism works in terms of audience engagement, and this is something that you can share with the funders. Now, when approaching the funders, you can also ask them about their goals. So one is the pitch that you make from your side. Now you can flip the sides and ask the funders, what is it that you want from the project? Do you think that solutions journalism approach is something that you would like to fund? So you can also flip the question to them, and you can tell them the kind of impact that they can create by funding solutions-oriented reporting or projects. Developing project ideas swiftly, and this is something that we are also currently experimenting with at Transitions. Let's say we are thinking of a design learning approach in which we are creating certain products and services which are solutions oriented, but instead of spending a lot of time and energy and finances on them, what we are doing is we are creating cheap, low cost, less time-efficient prototypes, and what we're doing is we are testing them with a target audience. Once you do this, you will know if this model, which you then want to kind of replicate on a larger scale, will work or not. And this is something which is also good for newsrooms which are a bit tight on resources. And lastly, you use solutions journalism as a platform for audience engagement. More audiences come to your channel, to your radio channel, to your website, they read more stuff, you have more community events, and when you have more audiences engaged and they see the value of solutions journalism and the impact that solutions journalism creates, this will, with time, like I said, slowly but steadily convert into revenue, which has happened in the US. There's research which is done by the SJN. We know it's a bit dated, but again, like I said, solutions journalism does take time to kind of show the benefits. Research takes time, people take time, because it's also, we are completely changing the narrative. People are used to reading problem-focused news. So it's also taking time for audiences to actually reimagine journalism in a way in which they're now being presented a form of journalism which is actually talking about things that work. So here you can see that SGN and its partners, they raised about $1.8 million to support solutions journalism. These were the Fuller Project, Seattle Times, and we, through our projects and through our partners, also hope that in the coming years we will have similar data for European newsrooms which have incorporated this approach in their reporting, and hopefully we'll be back with numbers for you. Last, we would like to end our presentation with this, is some inspiration for you from Rubrika. For those who don't know about this fantastic news outlet, Rubrika is Ukraine's premier solutions media outlet, and they turned 5 in March, so it's a big achievement for them. What also makes Rubrika's journey special is that in this very unfortunate invasion of Ukraine was actually the time when Rubrika doubled its readership. So the time when people in Ukraine or across the world were really dissociating from news and they were avoiding news because of the despair this negative news was bringing to them, Rubrika proved that a solutions-focused approach to reporting, in which they were telling stories of the resilience of Ukrainians to come together as a community and find solutions for their problems. There were stories about using ammunitions which were on the ground as waste and creating it into art, selling it and using the money for buying supplies for soldiers. There were stories about how were Ukrainians fighting against power cuts, etc. You can see more on their website. And actually, this resulted into doubling of their viewership since they started 1 year ago. And someone also shared, I don't have the data here with me, but this is coming from the editor-in-chief. She told me that they now have 2 million unique users on Twitter every month and 1 million on Facebook. So again, this is something for you to take away, and also a great way to end, because not only we're talking about solutions journalism, but here it's a very specific context which shows that it does engage people, whatever time it be. So thank you, if Jeremy wants to add anything.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is probably a lot of you are thinking, well, this might be a good idea, but how do I really pitch it to my audience? Again, we've talked a lot about the Solutions Journalism Network simply because they're really the leaders in the field. We rely upon them for resources and advice and things like that. They have a great kind of handbook as well by, if you do want to start adopting solutions journalism, how you can signpost it, how you can make clear to your readers or viewers that you're doing something different, and really kind of how to sell it among your audiences. So again, I'd encourage you to take a look at that. So we have a little bit of time left, I hope, 10, 15 minutes, maybe, Sarah? So anyone have any questions, anything we've said that's not clear, anything you would like to hear more about?
One in the back, yes.
Hello, that was very informative, thank you. My name is Eric, I'm from News Talk, a news and current affairs station in Ireland, so very interested in all that. How do you find it works in a constant news cycle? So, you know, we have a big news team and we've news on the hour, every hour, sometimes every 30 minutes. So you might be reporting on a crime that happened in Dublin. You know, is it more long form? Is there a place for it in the daily news cycle, daily newsroom?
Do you want to start?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, we get that question asked a lot, and it obviously doesn't work for breaking news, but it can be something where, say, the day after or 2 days after, you might take that, let's say, I don't know, unfortunately, you know, I come from America, even though I've been here for a long time, we have a lot of school shootings and things like that, right? So that's obviously a breaking news event, but perhaps there is a program somewhere that's working to lower shootings in schools that's been effective. So that would be something, it would be hard to dig that out immediately, and people probably aren't as interested in the heat of the moment, but maybe 2 or 3 days later, or maybe the next day, you put together an article about a program that's actually working as a good case example. We're trying to steer people more towards doing shorter stories because people often have in their head these solution stories have to be 5,000 words long, 8,000 words long, a half an hour documentary. There are a lot of shorter formats that have been shown to work. And again, we didn't show it, and I know we're mentioning SJN a lot, but they have this amazing resource called the Solutions Journalism Tracker, Story Tracker, and there's about 15,000 articles now that have been verified as solutions journalism. So it's not that just everyone can upload an article, but they've been verified, and you can search there under formats. So you can see there articles which are 700, 800 words long, shorter videos. So I think that's really a great resource so you can see how other people are doing it.
We have 2, 3 more questions we can have. I saw you, yep.
Hi, I'm Henrike from Hamburg, from Germany, and my question leads in the same direction. So our news are about 2 minutes long, and one news has about 3 sentences. And yeah, maybe you have some examples for doing solution journalism and stuff like that, because I wanted to, but I just don't know how.
You know, for this, there's also, sorry, what kind of format are you talking about? A mix of everything, or I'm not sure if I got that. Yeah, this is something that we get a lot, which is why we also we are aware that this example was not audio, but even in the video you see that sometimes it can be very difficult to compile everything in 4 minutes because you have to cut out so much, and that's exactly the problem you face with audio. We are still, journalists, I mean not we, but like the people that we work with are still experimenting with formats, but I think at this point of time, based on their experience and our feedback that we get, they are still going for longer formats on audio, 2 to 3 minutes. If you if you're able to make the insights a bit more concise. We know that we are always propagating that the 4 pillars are very important to make it a full-rounded story. But if that is not something, sometimes I don't know if this is you want to experiment with, but it can also be a follow-up. You can also add it into a next segment or a next episode if you feel there is not time enough, and if you also want your readers to come back to you. And this was something that we thought could be a nice experiment to do. Otherwise, if you use one character, that is also a good way of approaching a story, who's involved in the response of the solution, and you use that character to tell the story, then it can also be a quick narrative or a commentary from the person telling the story, and then it can also be concise. So it also breaks away from the format of the commentary from the person who's speaking or narrating the news, and I guess it also helps to break the flow, plus the focus then shifts from the journalist to the community or the actor. And that's what we also propagate in solutions journalism. It's not about the people. It's really not. We're focusing on the community, and maybe that is something that you want to experiment about, if Jeremy wants to add something.
No, I think, there's some formats it's really tough to make it work. So I guess it's about convincing the managers to be trying out different formats. It doesn't, again, have to be half an hour long. We saw the BBC segment there was around 4 minutes. Even that could be a little bit shorter. So I think it's just trying to convince people to try different things.
Last question.
We have one over here.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Anna from Radio Prague. I was just wondering if news fatigue has always been a problem, or if it's a more recent phenomenon. And if it's a more recent phenomenon, then why are we less psychologically resilient than people in the past, or is it just we're just more overwhelmed with information?
I would say it's the problem of plenty, maybe compared to before. Now you're bombarded with information from everywhere, and the ease of accessing information also adds to the fatigue, right? Because maybe you're talking about times before and how we are more affected by the problem now. I guess the access to information was different. You had to make more effort than you have to make now to read news, right? Now it's an extension of your arm if you really want to expose yourself to what's happening. And often people also find it difficult to filter the information. They have all your cookies, all your data, they know what you're reading, they will make sure that whichever website you go to, news comes in. And probably it's also because now there is so much competition in the market, there are these quick formats, there's clickbait journalism, so it's also the way the media industry has developed their business models and the way they work to be the first and to be the fastest. So that definitely has become a reason why we also find it difficult to distance ourselves from news, because we are, in the end, the users of this product. So I guess that is also why.
Yeah, I mean, as we said, the figures have gone up a lot, in the last 5 years. So it's not just COVID, but unfortunately, we're all covering negative stuff because that's what's out there. But again, what we're talking about is coming up with a different news agenda, so it's more of a mix. And I think that's one thing that maybe to take home for those of you who are in the news business is, if everyone's sitting around the editorial office talking about, yet again, doing the same problem story, our hope is that someone at least raises their hand and says, isn't there a response that's working somewhere that we can write about this time? So I think it's about mixing it up. And again, like we're not naive enough to think that we're going to stop covering negative stuff, and we're not saying that. I mean, journalists cover what's happening in the world. It's just about giving a better balance there so we don't keep bombarding people 24/7 with this stuff and get them tuning out of the news and tuning out of being civically active also.
And probably just to add disinformation, because I guess with time, there's also, again, the more the media, the agendas are different, there's more disinformation around, so people also are less trusting because they're not sure. There's also not enough media literacy, and that is also something we speak about less, that if there is more media literacy, people will maybe consume news better. So yeah, it's a question, it's a vicious cycle, and probably that's why we get affected more as well.
That is our time. Thank you so much, Meenal and Jeremy. Give it up. Yeah?
Thank you.
That was the last session in this room. So we have a quick break, and then we're all going to the main stage for 30 Ideas. Thank you all.